start with the thought that really God, who stands outside of time, space and time, otherwise how could he be the creator of both? Stands outside of space and time. The Bible gives us a lot of indicators on that fact, that he's the first and the last, the Alpha, the Omega, he's the start, the finish, what the Bible calls the author and the finisher of our faith. Peter hints to it when he says a day is as 1,000 years, as 1,000 years is as a day. I don't think we have to read too much into that other than to say that with God, they're one and the same. Because for God in the timeless place, what does it matter if it's a day or 1,000 years? I think we could even be safe to say that for God, time is really no big deal. Right. That's where a paradox comes in. For God, time is no big deal, but for God, timing is an enormous deal. Isn't it interesting that time's nothing to God, but timing was so important to God? Paul would write to the Galatians and say that Jesus came born of a woman, born under the law, so that he could redeem those who were under the law in the fullness of time. So whenever the time was full, Jesus would go to the cross and die. Not a second before the time was full, and not a second late when the time was full. For a God that could care nothing less about living in the timeline, he sure does find timing important. Remember what Jesus says to his mother in John 2 at the wedding of Cana, when she says to him, "Son, they've run out of wine." And Jesus says to her, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My time has not yet come." He says the same thing to his brothers in John 7 when they say, "Why don't you go down to Jerusalem at the feast day and reveal yourself to everyone as who you say you are?" And Jesus says, "My time has not yet come." He was always throwing out that phrase, "It's not my time." Then at Gethsemane, after spending a few hours in prayer, Peter and James and John passing out every hour. Jesus is in prayer. And Jesus comes out of the garden and he says, "Okay, fellas, wake up. The time has come. The time is at hand." So God, who could do anything in any time frame, binds himself to timing. And I can look at my own life, I know you can look at yours, and there are so many moments where the timing of God was so crucial to something that happened in my life that I didn't set it up, I didn't plan it, I didn't foresee it, but the timing of God, I was in the right place. You know, we say in the secular world, you're in the right place at the right time. That could never be more true than the children of God, who are following the footsteps of the Master and being in the right place at the right time. And so I want to minister on that from a few angles. I want to start with, go with me if you would, to the book of Galatians, and I want to deal with a couple of different moments in the New Testament in which, and I will use two different writers, Paul and Peter, using that thought process that believers have a due season. They have a due time. They have a moment where, and they don't know exactly when it is. And I want to show you that God's not in this keeping you in a mystery. He's not trying to fool you, but there's a moment in the time frame of your life in which God's doing something and going to do things. I don't really know how I feel about referring to God moving in seasons. I believe that God has already spoken to us through His Son. I believe that He's already finished the work through Calvary. I don't think we have a season of revival followed by a season of drought, that the church is in a season of renewal. I'm not sure that I buy that under the new covenant. I believe it's a finished work, but I do believe in my own life that I've had moments where I know God was doing something that He wasn't doing yesterday. That He just literally, He was leading me into an area that maybe 6 months before I wouldn't even have listened to Him. And so perhaps I'm the one that is seasonal, but I still believe that God has a due time for me. That God has a due time for you. And as I was praying tonight, I said, Lord, this is one of those messages that really, it's a smattering of what you are within the time frame, but has the potential, God, to speak directly into someone's situation that has really been praying about the due season. And I don't know what your due season is. And so we're going to hit a couple of them tonight and just let the Holy Spirit, we're going to let Him take us down that journey.